Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering What We Do in the Shadows. Season 4, Episode 1, Reunited. In this episode, we get to see the infantile Colin Robinson, which is just truly so scary. So scary. It's a very scary little guy. And also, Guillermo has had it enough, except he hasn't. Has he? He's never really had enough. Not actually. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. What's up, Max? I am so excited to be getting back into this show. It was a long wait before I got to start this season, and I started watching this episode like right after finishing the previous season, and then stopped myself after I think like about 10 or 15 minutes because I realized how long it was going to be before I got to cover it. And I was just like, I'm just going to try and save it so that it's a lot more fresh. I have no problem with watching and rewatching an episode or reading and rereading, a book in order to make sure I really get it. But there are times where it feels like, and I think for this show in particular, this show isn't super focused on anything that I feel I really need a second go around to like grasp. And because it's so comedic, I think I do a little bit better with talking about it if I have only just seen it because it's still really fresh. Whereas a rewatch with a show that depends so heavily on like surprise gags and twists and stuff to make you laugh, I don't feel it's like necessary or works as well. So anyway, I had started the episode and I waited I decided to wait, but in that time I forgot that I hadn't finished it. So in my head, I was like, oh, right. I'm recording on that episode. I know that Colin Robinson's weird baby version of himself is there and the house is falling apart. And then I tried to like go further and be like, and what else happens? And I was like, that's weird. I really don't remember. Oh, well, I guess I'll see it. And then I went to pull the episode up and it was like, would you like to pick it up from the 15 minutes where you left off? And I was like, oh, right. So it was a really kind of fun experience to like rewatch the beginning, but then still get the surprises at the end because you guys, I don't know what's going to happen with the whole Nadja wants to build a vampire nightclub thing. But if you know me at all, you will fully expect what I am about to say, which is I cannot fucking wait for this. I am so hopeful that they decide to go through with this. I am like everything about opening a nightclub is simultaneously something I would desperately love to do and something I would absolutely never want to do. Does that make sense? It's just like, oh, fuck yeah. I most certainly am going to want to plan every little bit of how the place looks, what kind of drinks we're serving. I want to pick out the fixtures in the bathrooms and make shit really over the top. I want lights. I want a wild looking bar. Do I want any of the like actual logistics? No. The design, the vibes, yes. And I have a feeling that's gonna be kind of what Nadja is like. Like, she strikes me as somebody, I won't say, because Nadja, she has often been the voice of reason in these episodes. Not to say that she hasn't been unreasonable, because, wow, has she ever? But she is more consistently mature and practical than the guys tend to be. And yet, I'm kind of wondering if maybe she doesn't fully grasp what it is she's signing up for here a little bit. Like, as somebody who has worked in food service and who also, I was the hostess for a new nightclub that opened in a town that I was in. And you guys, the dudes who were running this, they did not know what they were about to do. They like clearly had bitten off so much more than they could chew. It was just so obvious that they were a couple of dudes who worked desk jobs and had saved up enough money or gotten like speculative money from somewhere and were like, wouldn't it be cool if, and decided to go in on it. But you could just tell that neither of them had ever done a job like this a day in their lives. And so they were focused on all of the wrong things. And the energy of like even my interview, which should have been such a red flag. I showed up for my interview and I walked in to this weird little, like, what I think now is just a sort of rent by the hour office area. It had no distinguishing characteristics to mark it as a place that they actually like really did business out of. It felt like they needed a place for the day and they found somewhere. And I came in and both of the dudes who I was interviewing with let out this breath of relief at the sight of me and then went, "Oh, thank God. I mean, you look great. You should have seen some of the other people that have come in here. I mean, oof, not good." And I think back to that now and I'm just like, I really should have just left. I should have left. I didn't understand like the myriad of red flags being waved in my face at the time. I literally took it just as a compliment, which is wild to think of now. And then one of the guys, it turned out, was dating the French teacher from my old high school. Not dating. I'm sorry. He was married to the French teacher at my old high school. And I found out later had gotten the money for this club from her dad. Well, a year later, after the club had failed utterly, and I had a new job and had moved, he called me and asked me if I still looked the way that I used to look and wondered if I was doing anything. And when I was like, "Dude, I'm married," he was like, "Yeah, me too. It's fine." So anyway, that's my experience with working for a nightclub and it being something that a person had no clue what they were doing. And I just really am looking forward to seeing what the show decides to do with this, because it's truly one of those memories that I go back in my head and there's a lot I would have done differently in the way that I handled things, but there's also a part of me that is glad I didn't walk away because I got to see some shit. You know what I'm saying? Asher is in the chat. Ew, what the fuck? Indeed, Asher. Indeed, what the fuck? So, this, we pick up a year after when our friends took off and headed for Europe. And it turns out that Laszlo had pushed Guillermo in, we saw it at the time, into one of the shipping crates, and that was why he had asked for like Pedialyte and Oreos and stuff, because he knew that Colin Robinson needed his help and he wasn't going to go with his wife, but he didn't tell her that, which just seemed really, really weird. And then when we come back to the house, the place is absolutely trashed, and I really want to give kudos here. I know that I have like complimented the way the house is designed inside and out before, but really there is something that certain TV shows, and the one that always comes to mind for me is Desperate Housewives. There's an episode of Desperate Housewives that's supposed to be like a major storm hit and everybody's homes have taken serious damage. And yet it's extremely clear how staged all of the debris is. There's no dirt, there's no mud, there's no water. It's just scattered bits of things, but it's not messy. It just feels untidy in a vague way. This house, as you come up to it, you see the front steps are like covered in what look to be old like takeout menus and flyers. Just random shit that's piled up, and it's raining, so everything's really soggy. There's a bunch of packages as well that have been sort of left there, and all of these like dead plants that are hanging over the entrance. And then you go in and it is a true haunted house vibes. Like, it's giving Crimson Peak on the inside. And the camera is so hilarious. It's going slowly up the stairs. A crow comes out of nowhere and like scares the cameraman for a moment. And you hear this like, you know, echoing sound of a television on in the midst of all of this extremely cartoonish haunted house like atmosphere. And you come in and Laszlo is watching some like house flipping reality show. Now, I don't know because I don't have actual television. I don't have HGTV. I don't know if this is like a real show that they're talking about or if it's like a parody of that show with the twins. That's the one that I always think of, is the Property Brothers. So I don't know if it's meant to be like a parody of that or if this is actually a real show. But he is startled for a moment at the camera guy, but then is like, oh, hi, long time no see. So I guess the camera guy is just like kept away for a year. Doesn't matter. It's fine. And he says, just keep it down. I've found that this is the only thing that'll lull him to sleep. And he gestures at this, what I'm going to put this kid at, maybe like 5 or 6 years old. And I'm going to be perfectly real with you guys. I am incredibly bad at dating how old anybody is. Never mind children. I have no earthly idea. So I'm saying like 6 or 7 years old, 5 or 6. I am just kind of reaching into the ether and hoping, because it is, who knows, especially if you try and be like, oh, my 8-year-old is in blank grade. You could tell me literally any grade and I'd be like, yeah, that sounds right. Like, I am very, very bad at all of those kind of milestone things. Don't know them, don't remember them, nothing. So what they've done is it's clearly just like a real kid that they have superimposed Colin Robinson's face over with CGI. And the effect is so deeply unsettling. It's like, I don't even really know where to start with how creepy this is. It's like a combo of the Uncanny Valley thing, because you definitely know that it's CGI, so you can see the seams in it, especially when he like kind of turns his head suddenly and stuff. There's moments where you're just like, ugh. But then there's also stuff like the fact that his face is still pretty much as old looking as, like, they haven't tried to make him look like a baby Colin Robinson. He's got the face of a 40-year-old man or 35 or whatever on this child. So just still has the circles under his eyes and the jowl lines and stuff. Like, it's all still very apparent. And yet he's got this delicate curly hair. Like, it's very angelic. And he's in a onesie, like all curled up. And Laszlo is saying that he doesn't call him Colin. He calls him boy. because he wants him to be his own man. But later on, everybody is calling him Colin. And when they ask what his name is, he says Colin, even though he hasn't been given a name. And Laszlo argues he's only saying that because you have said that he's Colin in front of him a couple of times. So it's not coming from a natural place. He's just repeating back to you, which I can't decide how much I think that's true. Is that how that works? I don't know how that works. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, this I'm gonna keep calling him Colin though, because I'm just gonna. And we have this amazing moment of him playing at the park with Colin at night, and it's a real foggy night, and he's eating some dude while he's sitting on one of those little bouncy things. And when Colin comes down the slide, he just drops the dude on the ground and catches him. Oh my God. You guys, the idea of him just feeding on this guy at the park in the middle of the night while playing with this unnatural child. And I really have to admit, I have said many, many times on other things how much I don't like the addition of a kid that ages really fast into pretty much name a story, and any story that's got vampires in it, especially, they always try and do a thing like this. They had kids that grew super fast on True Blood, and I think that they were fairy. There was the obvious Renesmee in Twilight, which was a nightmare. I was going to say Buffy, but it wasn't Buffy. It was Angel. And he had a kid in another dimension who then comes and is aging super quickly. It's so boring and so tiresome. And it always feels like they just want to add a kid into the mix, but they don't want to deal with a child actor, which I totally get. And then they're all right, so then how do we get around this? Oh, we'll just have them age super fast so then we can deal with basically an adult actor from here on out. And while I sympathize, and I understand that's not the case with Twilight, where she was writing a thing, but she also, I think, was keeping in mind what it would be like for cinema as well. I'm being a little cynical, I guess, but that's fine. I'll be cynical. It's no big deal. This is a complete exception, obviously, because it's done for comedy. It's done for the fun of it. I am absolutely on board with basically mocking what all of these other shows and movies and whatnot have done unironically. And I am really, really wondering where we're going with this, because I can't tell how much of the show these folks plan out ahead of time. Did they do the thing with Colin becoming a baby and then and starting over? Did they figure out what they wanted to do with this concept before they did it? Or did they just go, to be funny, what if we had a baby Colin who didn't get, what I'm imagining we're going to have is a Colin who is very shortly going to be the same age as the actor that we were originally dealing with, but he's going to have the weirdo vibe of somebody who hasn't actually grown up. And I'm not sure that's how it's going to work, because I don't know what the intellect of the kid is going to be like. Does that keep up with his physical aging? Does his mind age the same way? Or is this a thing where you age mentally the same way everybody else does, but your body is way, way ahead of you? Oh, okay. Asher says I'd say 4 or 5 on this kid. Okay, cool. Thank you, Asher, for your insight on that, as I have no idea. Ms. T says, so glad to hear that. It was the first thing I thought of how you dislike the rapidly aging child. Yeah, like, because it feels like they're purposely being like, oh, God, that trope is so dumb. What if we did that with, like, one of the characters? And I don't know that's what the mindset was, but that's my headcanon of it, because I feel like I can't be the only one who finds that really tiresome. So anyway, I'm just really curious to see what they're going to do with like his whole development, and whether or not he's going to be trying to like live in the world as a grown man with a child's mind, or is he going to, like, I don't know. Genuinely don't know where we're going. But we see all of this, like, very Addams Family bonding stuff between him and Laszlo. They're, like, working with chainsaws, cutting trees down, and doing, like, sword fighting and whatnot. So we go to the credits, and then Nadja comes home. And she expresses some surprise that the cameraman is still even alive. Then tells Laszlo how much she missed him, and he really, really wants to go upstairs and have sex. And she's like, well, I missed you so, so much. She calls him my wide lover. And then she backs up and she smacks him in the face. You were supposed to come with me to London, but you just packed me up and shipped me off. Now, guys, I don't really know what to make of what's happening here. And I'm just gonna, I'm choosing to not really try and read into it very much. That's where I'm landing ultimately. But I do have to mention it, all right? That they're acting like they just straight up have been apart for a year but never spoke the whole time. And it's like he gave her the letter that he put, like, yeah, sure. But the house has a phone. And even if it didn't, you in a year could definitely like write letters to each other. It's just sort of a weird thing. And I think maybe it's supposed to be part of the joke, is the fact that we're just going to act as if a year passed and there's no reason for anybody to ever have talked to each other. But, I just found it so bizarre that we're like coming back into this with characters who it seems feel like they have gone through the same, like they're watching a show with us. Does that make sense? Like they have the same amount of information that we have. Asher says their counsel sends messages by VHS. I really don't see them calling. I guess that's true, but they have email. Like we've seen them use email. The thing about the council and the way that they send their messages like that is that I was putting that down to the bureaucracy of the council. Like I thought that was supposed to be a joke about the way the vampiric council worked, not necessarily about how vampires communicate as a whole. But maybe that is part of it, is just that they don't know how to, or they don't bother with a lot of this stuff. I feel like I don't have a good grasp of how they feel with that, though, because we've seen a phone and we've seen it ringing and pretty much nobody answering it. They made Guillermo answer it. So I guess it's possible they don't even know how it works. And we've seen them using their email, but they've also like fallen for some scams or almost like done scams with that. So anyway, like I said, I'm just going to basically let it go because it doesn't matter. But I was so like startled at the fact that this is apparently the first time they've caught up in that whole time. And there's a repeating joke that I loved in this, which is unsurprisingly raccoon related. Because Nadja keeps seeing this raccoon and thinking that is the baby Colin Robinson. And I will tell you kids what, that shit cracked me up. I am never, ever not going to find it funny when somebody is like so disconnected from reality, or just at least inexperienced with kids, we could say, that they don't even know what a small child looks like or don't have any particular expectations of that. Like, it just really made me laugh, because this is the first time she sees him, she's like, oh, I think that's Colin Robinson there. And then later on, she's holding a raccoon and talking about how Colin Robinson keeps giving her kisses. And he's like, no, my darling, I don't think that's him because he isn't here. And y'all, raccoons, it's just a soft spot for me. I can't explain it. I don't know what it is. I love them desperately. And if you're going to keep making jokes where she's got a like pet raccoon that she thinks is a human child, I'm here for it. Honestly, I'm 100% here for it. So I'm trying to, sorry, I just want to make sure. Oh, Ms. T says, I thought they didn't bother calling either. I can't imagine them on the phone. That's fair. All right. I will accept that they just don't do that. Let's go with that. So then we have Nadja being like, oh, and one more thing. And Nandor swans in, and he's talking about how excited he is to be back in the house, and he crashes right through the floor. And he's in this like water that's about chest height on him, and talking about how there's a gas leak smell, and could somebody drop down a lit candle for him to check a little bit more closely. Ah, dear. So we go to another exterior shot. We have a nice little bit where one of the light bulbs on the lantern in front like shorts out and sends sparks all over the place. And then Nandor is telling his story, as it turns out, in the middle of Laszlo and Nadja having sex on the couch, which just doesn't really seem like a thing anybody would want. But I guess, sure. He says that he got as far as Fresno. I met a plump family on the train from Wisconsin. I planned to drain them, but they were quite endearing. They had a very particular way of speaking, and he tries to do one of those like Midwestern accents, and it's he's very good at sounding like a guy with Nandor's accent doing another accent. And I really enjoy that in the background is their like emo kid, and there's a real sense of like, maybe that kid would have enjoyed being turned, just perhaps. I feel like they would have been on board. And he says, I booked passage on a container ship too, and then he gets cut off. I feel like you guys aren't really listening to what I'm saying. At one point, Nadja's ankles are like up against the like top of the couch, but her top half is like completely invisible. It's hilarious. It's like, and I think it's made funnier by the shoes she's wearing, because she's got a kind of Wicked Witch of the West style footwear going on. I hitched a ride on a ship, and after I drank all of the crew, we ran into a little delay, and they make it that he was the one responsible for that container ship that blocked the canal. And that joke, it's the kind of thing that I wonder how well it's going to age, because it could age great and we'll all remember it and be like, oh my God, remember that fucking thing. Or it could be this sort of thing that gets sort of lost in the mists of time. And if you watch this, you'd be like, was that real? I can't. And then you have to Google it, you know? But I, in the moment, really, really enjoyed it. As he's talking, we have Colin going by on it's not exactly a tricycle, because it's like one of those plastic ones that's low to the ground. I don't remember what you call that. I feel like it has a special name. But yeah, they're all just kind of like unsure how to cope with this kid. And when we see the way that Laszlo was like studying him. You guys, he's doing phrenology stuff, like measuring his head. And it seems like maybe like an electrified cage that he keeps him in. It's unclear. Important literature or colorful shit. Make your choice. And when he chooses the wrong book, he electrocutes him. And guys, the faces that Colin has to make, that they're putting on this kid, I cannot emphasize enough how totally uncomfortable it makes me. I just hate it. I subjected him to boring imagery and he found it as tedious as I did. He is not and will not grow into the boring energy vampire from whence he came. And I am very interested on whether that's true or not, because if he's not going to be a regular energy vampire, who is he going to be? I don't know. Oh man. I'm just really curious about this. I forgot that Laszlo says to Nandor, "Old chap, there's room in the back." Oh my God. You guys, I'm sorry. I'm so distracted. You know how I like to have the show on in the background while I'm talking about it. And I forgot how the couch that they're having sex on just goes straight through the floor. And when they're down there, Laszlo says, "Fuck me." And she says, "Okay, here I go." And she tries to climb on him, but he's drowning. I forgot how that whole thing went. Oh, man. So there's this pounding sound. And when Nandor asks what it's coming from, Laszlo says it's pipes. And he explains how all of the holes in the wall are from when he was trying to track down which of the pipes was making that noise. And Nandor says, "I was wondering where Guillermo was," and neither of them remember who he is at all. And he describes him to a T. Nobody gets it. Nadja, however, says, "Oh, I do have a teensy present," even though she was just acting like she didn't remember who he was. And I couldn't tell whether the joke was supposed to be she didn't remember that was his name, or if the joke was supposed to be that she was pretending not to know who he was, even though she realized, you know what I mean? I don't know. But either way, she opens the shipping container and he gets out. He is enraged. And of course, has shit himself because there's nowhere else to shit in that fucking container. And the whole, that was him thumping in there the whole time. Apparently he's been here for a couple of days. And he is so angry. You guys, the look on his face, we've seen him mad, but the mad here, I really kind of thought he was about to do some violent vampire shit. You know that, and I mean violent vampire, as a vampire slayer, not that he is a vampire. So he tries to make a big exit and stomp away. He goes through the floor also, and Nandor has to go down there and save him and rescue him. We have a nice little bit of wire work where Nandor comes up out of the floor holding Guillermo against him, and he's flying, right? So he just comes straight up out, and as he's coming up, Guillermo is spitting water out of his mouth. I thought that was pretty well staged. I liked it because it's very sudden. So it gives you the impression that this all happened in a split second, you know? So Guillermo is getting cleaned up by Nandor, and Nandor is trying to suss out just how mad Guillermo is. And Guillermo tries to tell the camera how he's a very different man, that he is going to start looking out for number one. And it is not at all the vibe that he's really giving. This is what he's saying, but it's cut with him still like cleaning up, dragging bodies, handling the household chores, despite all of these things saying how he's going to look after himself first. And I love, he even asks for like a glass of water from Nandor, and all Nandor does is get a glass and hold it up to one of the pipes that's like presumably either draining rainwater, or if we want to get real gross, maybe that's like a sewer pipe. Who knows? It's something horrible. It's brown. And so this is when Nandor says that he would like for Guillermo to be his best man. And Guillermo is excited and says he will. But you guys, I don't know. So Guillermo had been excited to be turned into a vampire. Nandor was excited to do it. Then Guillermo got, like, Laszlo got the drop on him and he got put in a box. Nandor was very sad over the fact that he got stood up and he left Guillermo's suitcase at the train station and left. And evidently, we're just going to leave it at that. We're not going to try again. We're not going to pick up where we left off. And Guillermo, of course, is being held responsible for the fact that he didn't show up, despite the fact that he was basically kidnapped. Nandor says something about how it was very disrespectful what Guillermo did, even though that's not what he did. It's what Laszlo did. But I found it really weird that Guillermo doesn't seem to want to try again. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's supposed to be that something has sort of crossed over inside of him after this past year and what he's been put through, that he no longer has the same, like, sunny outlook on what that would be like, although that's kind of an ironic way to put it for a vampire, but you get what I'm saying. But anyway, he asks, will you be my best man? And when Guillermo says, oh my God, you're getting married, he says, don't be jealous. And Guillermo says, I'm actually not. And he seems genuinely to actually be not, which I think appears to disappoint Nandor a little bit. I think he wanted a little bit of jealousy here. I'm almost wondering if that's not why he said this. Like, because it becomes clear quickly, he has no real plans. He hasn't chosen his wife yet. And so there's no reason to be asking this question. I think it might have been simply to get a rise out of him. And Guillermo tries to say, maybe some folks could even say that it was cooler to be best man than a vampire, but then sort of stops himself and is just like, no, I guess nobody would say that. Maybe they wouldn't say that. So at this point, he says, since you have to help me pick my bride, because that is what a best man does. And as Guillermo is attempting to explain that is not what a best man does, Colin comes in running around with a hat that has a lit candle stuck to the top of it. And he just starts running in circles. There's a point a little bit later where he is being left to his own devices and is just sticking things in electrical sockets. And I'll tell you what, kiddos, I had a bit of a whole thing today with my dogs that I'm taking care of. I don't recall how long it's been since I last recorded on this show and if I had the dogs then. But suffice to say, I've got two. Still trying to find a home for one of them. Sweet boy, but they are handfuls. And it was really reminding me of that because it's basically like you take your eyes off of them for a moment and they will just absolutely ruin your life. And they got out of our yard a couple times today. And Owen and I keep trying to patch the areas in the fence that it seems like they're climbing over and extend them upwards or cover the gate to keep them from being able to climb over it. and they just keep finding ways out. And I don't know what to do to entertain them in the yard. It's not like we don't pay attention to them. I played fetch with Sam for 10 minutes before taking him for a mile walk this morning. I took Pippin for a mile walk and he slept in our bed. We are spending a lot of time with them. We're doing a lot. Like, I think we are good dog parents, but they make us look really bad. They make us look so neglectful, just roaming the fucking neighborhood. Like, we are that house at the moment where people are like, oh, they're dogs again. And I hate that for us because, oh my God, we're just putting so much effort into keeping this from happening and it's just happening anyway. So anyway, a friend of mine was talking about, actually, I think there was somebody in one of the chats on a live who said that their friend who raised a puppy and also had an infant child said that the puppy was much harder because infants cannot move. You put them where they go. Once they grow enough to walk around and stuff, sure. But puppies can walk and destroy pretty much like, you know, within like 3 weeks. And yeah, I'm really starting to feel like I don't know what to do. Asher says, part husky dogs. Yeah, we couldn't trust our husky around anything less than a 6-foot wooden fence. Chain link was a no-go. That's exactly, like, we've extended it to 6 feet and it is chain link. We've extended it by zip tying wooden pickets to the fence and then stapling chicken wire between the pickets. Because, guys, I don't know if you know this, but fences are fucking insanely expensive. That's what we can afford to do right now. And that alone, that janky job that we did cost us like $400. And it looks like crap and is barely effective. Like, it's kept them in for this long and they got over it today. It's the first time in literally months that they've managed to get out that way. So it's been working mostly, but I genuinely don't know what to do. One time Nanook ended up across the road chasing the farmer's donkeys. Oh God, he was lucky he didn't get shot. Yeah, I mean, especially like a husky is a big dog and people are afraid and I don't blame them, you know. I like dogs and you see a dog on the loose, especially a big dog, and that can be really scary. So Miss T, 100% puppies are harder plus no diapers. Yeah, that's the other thing is like, if you don't know about potty training a puppy, guys, let me just tell anybody who's listening, it's a PSA from me to you. Unless you can take a month off from work to train this dog, don't get a puppy. Don't do it. Straight up. I don't think anybody should get puppies unless they are people who work from home and are going to be there all day, or people who don't have to work, period. Because otherwise, that poor animal is not going to have nearly enough of your attention, and you're going to be so tired from work and so frustrated with this dog. It's not worth it. Just don't. Get a grown adult rescue dog and save everybody the heartache. So anyway, the fact that he just kept getting into trouble, it was just reminding me of keeping these fucking monsters entertained. And I love when Guillermo is like, you let him swim in the sewage. He says it lets him shake off the sillies, which frankly, guys, I totally get. I really do. And it turns out he feeds him on the floor, Count Chocula, in a dog bowl and trains him to like sit and stay. And, you know, is this appropriate for a real child? No, it is not. Is Colin Robinson a real child? No, he is not. So I'm like fine with it. You know, go ahead. I don't care. You might as well have some weirdo child mixed in with these weirdo vampires, because you try and raise him normally and he's going to be it's not going to work out either way. So at this point, Guillermo is talking about how he is researching the ways that they're going to fix the house. And he is also the one that's being tasked with like looking after Colin Robinson. And I think like there's a combo of things happening that he's being saddled with it because he's the familiar, even though he's not their familiar, he's their familiar. But also, he's so horrified at the way that Laszlo's been raising him that he can't help but step in. To which I say, Guillermo, you need to learn to curb that impulse. Because he's going to take offense to the fact that you're horrified. You don't need to be involved, and Colin isn't a regular kid. It's fine. Just leave it. And it turns out that Guillermo is like not talking to Nadja and Laszlo. And so he's just like coming into the room and telling Nandor about what he's done research on for fixing the house in front of them, but doesn't want to actually like engage with them. And this is when Nadja brings up, if we're fixing up the house, how are we paying for all of this? And it turns out none of them even know if they have any money. It's like Colin was in charge of absolutely everything in terms of their finances and like the mortgage or rent or whatever it is. And they have no idea how to get access to any of that. Laszlo has his bank card, but who knows how much money is even in there. And he doesn't have the PIN number for it, which I am very unsure what to bet here. If you were asking me, do I think Colin has very little money or a lot of money? I'm really, really not sure what to say. Part of me wants to say he has a lot of money because investments and stuff, they're boring. And he loved that shit. So I want to say that he would have probably been able to like do, and also being promoted from like no work, he probably was getting paid pretty well. And that he doesn't spend his money on much. He doesn't go out and do things. He doesn't have many, like, he didn't do anything with luxury, right? So what's he spending the money on? And I figure the only reason I might think he doesn't have money is because he got suckered into like Dogecoin, something janky, some Bitcoin, you know, or he bought like one of those those NFT apes, something stupid like that. That's the only reason I could think. But I'm going to guess he's got a good amount put away. I'm just like, you could go either way with this. And if you justified it enough, I'd be willing to believe anything. Miss T says, what's his PIN, would you say? 0000. I say that. I don't even know if that's allowed. You know, some PINs, when you set them up, they won't let you use consecutive numbers of the same digit, which I thought was like really weird because come on. But Miss T says, I say 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I like it. We'll go with 1, 2, 3, 4 or 0000 as a backup. And when Guillermo sees that Laszlo like is acting like, oh, I don't have the PIN number, Guillermo snatches the card from him and goes up to Colin and is like, what's the PIN number? And Colin starts to say some numbers and Guillermo is like, let's get a pad and paper. And he begins writing them down and he's like saying the numbers and I'm like, all right, cool. This is working. And then we cut to like 15 minutes later and he's just continuing to say numbers and he has written about 7 pages worth of numbers. So this kid was just saying, and I kind of like it. I know that it's supposed to be that this kid just doesn't really know what he's saying and so he's just saying it. But I'm going to fully invest myself in the headcanon that new baby Colin is a troll and that some part of him knows exactly what he's doing and is delighting in fucking with them. And I don't think that's actually true, but I like it, so I'm going to go with it. So this is when Nadja brings up the vampire nightclub. And she says, like in the film Blade with the blood sprinklers, the live F&S show. I don't remember what F&S is. Fang and sex? Fucking suck? What's F&S? And they immediately start to like float other ideas without really giving her idea any serious consideration. So we go to her, you know, and she's doing the talking head thing to the camera, and she is describing how she was on the like some committee at one point, and how she presented this idea, the vampire nightclub, then too, and they didn't take it seriously at all. Supreme Worldwide Vampiric Council, that's it. Do not let them put you on a 10-year vampiric planning committee, because that is just where they stick Z-list and C-list vampires to just sit around talking about boring admin all day. And we see this guy doing this like very boring presentation, and then she gets up and she tries to make it jazzy and talk about the vampire nightclub, and all of them react with sort of derision and basically say everybody always tries to present this idea, and they all think that it's like a new and exciting idea. And she's just so crushed. Like, every new vampire comes up with this idea. It's just not what we do here. And I just felt so bad for her, because she's like clearly disappointed, also a little bit embarrassed. And she says something in this talking head about how she should have known to use her special voice, and she didn't. So then we come back to the present, and Guillermo is in the middle of talking about just going and hypnotizing a bank teller. And all of a sudden she stands up and says, "Enough." And they do this really nice thing with the sound design, that they amplify her voice, but they also make everything else get vague and quiet. So it's like your hearing has been damaged, and there's that like tinnitus, high-pitched sound and everything. And she says, "I'm telling you, we're opening a vampire nightclub. And any questions?" And they're all just like, "No, I guess that's fine." So you guys, I'm so excited for this. I really am. I have no idea what to expect from the design of this. It seems like she wants to open it in the vampiric headquarters, which, like, do you think that's going to happen? Like, I wasn't sure if they were even talking about opening it within their own home, which I didn't think was likely, but like they come up with some fucking harebrained schemes, so why not? So yeah, they go to the headquarters and they turn on the lights, and evil Mabel is just sitting there, and it turns out she has been chilling at that table waiting for a year for them to come back, and just didn't notice that much time had passed. I just wanted to get up and leave, and I kept thinking as soon as I did, it would be the moment when you came in. I guess we have a lot to catch up on. And this is when Nadja says, "Actually, no business of usual, change of direction." And Maple says, "Oh, okay. That's always something I enjoy." You guys, I just rewatched Gravity Falls recently, and she does the voice of Mabel on that show. Flawless. Such a great character. And then Owen and I have recently started watching Bob's Burgers for the first time. And she also does the voice of a little girl on Bob's Burgers, and it is a really different energy. And it's really funny to see her here now, too. And I'm just like, man, I am just getting, what is her name? Kristen Shaw? I'm just getting a lot of her lately. And I really enjoy her. And I love that her voice is so specifically little girl sounding that she can get all this work as a voice voice artist for little girls because it is very convincing, you know? So the episode ends with Nadja yelling at the camera, "I'm opening a vampire nightclub, and if any of you motherfuckers get in my way, you will surely live to regret it." And she says it with her special voice, and 2 lamps behind her explode. And that is the end of the episode. So y'all, I am 100% here for it. Cannot wait to see where we're going with this. Extremely curious what the fuck we're going to do with Colin Robinson. I'm pretty good with him just being like a little chaos demon at the moment. And he's not aging so fast that we're going to be back to regular Colin like particularly soon, I don't think. I mean, it's been a year and he is looking like he's around 5 years old. So I feel like unless this speeds up a lot or something else changes, we're going to be dealing with Chaos Demon Colin for a while. Unless the show decides to do another like jump ahead in time, which it could very well do, especially if they're trying to do a nightclub thing, like that's a considerable amount of construction and whatnot. Maybe we'll get a jump ahead in time and see, you know, like we'll skip over all of the building parts of it and we'll get to go to it being almost complete or something. Jan says she's in the Secret Benedict Society too. I heard of that from her Twitter, actually. I've never heard of that show in my life. And when I saw the poster for it, didn't ring any bells at all. Apparently that just got pulled from streaming and she was sharing because she was upset because she doesn't have a copy of it. They don't make like physical media anymore for a lot of shows. So once it gets pulled from streaming, it's fucking gone. And she was really upset. And some lovely soul on Twitter figured out how to burn the DVD of all of the seasons and made like a little case for it and like a label for the CD and sent it to her as a gift. And it was like this sweetest, cutest thing you ever saw. And she sent them this like massive gift basket from Harry and David as a thank you, and said that the little note said, "I was so touched by this, I started crying." And I was like, oh my God, I love her so much. She's so cute. Ms. T says in Flight of the Conchords, I have not seen that either. I'm trying to think what the original thing I saw her in was, with the one that like jams in my mind the most is 30 Rock, and she plays kind of a psycho, and which is like, she's just very good. She can play extremely silly, goofy, or she can play like scary, and either way it works for her. All right, I am going to wrap it up, but I appreciate you guys so much and I'm excited to be back on the show. Thank you to Max for commissioning this, and I'll be seeing y'all again on Thursday with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.